So what's going to happen, just to give you a brief outline, we had this initial meeting online that you have as an introduction for the whole course, in which Rinpoche and myself already discussed a little bit and gave some general ideas of our traditions. And so what's happening now, we have these 6 sessions, and we're going to alternate. Each time one of us is going to give a talk with some guided meditation. Then the other's going to come in, we have some exchange. And the emphasis throughout will be very much on the practice. I think that was also quite clear in our initial meeting that if we go for too much on the doctrinal side, there's just, things don't fit so well. But when we talk about the practice, when we open our heart and talk about the practice, we really meet at that one point. The one point I said of not clinging. That's where all the practices converge. And so I will try very much to stay on the practice side. And whatever little bit I have to say in doctrinal terms will be pretty much just as a backup for the practice. Problem I have sort of is how to bring all the richness of the practice into this relatively limited amount of time. And what I will be doing now is just briefly talk about other practices that I usually teach that build up for the emptiness meditation, just to give you an idea of what I normally expect yogis to already be familiar with. And I need to mention that anyway, this is stuff for serious meditators. Rinpoche and myself are not giving an introduction to mindfulness and meditation right here. This is something really for people who have already a stable practice, years of practice, and want to go deeper. But even with that much in place, let me just give you a rough outline of my usual meditation teachings, which I regularly present in online courses at the place where I stay here in Barris Center of Buddhist Studies in Massachusetts. And all of these teachings are based on my comparative research into early Buddhist sources. The first block of meditation is Satipatthana, the 4 establishments of mindfulness. And there we have quite different versions. We have one Pali version and 2 Chinese versions. And when we compare them, different transmission lineages of the oral literature, when we compare them, we find the common ground. And the common ground for the first establishment of mindfulness, the first Satipatthana, Smriti Upasthana, contemplation of the body, are 3 exercises. The anatomical constitution of the body, the elements of the body, and corpse in stages of decay. So these 3 exercises are kind of challenging our way, how we normally perceive human bodies, and are trying to lead us to an understanding of their true nature. And the way I teach it is with body scans. And body scan will also come up in the emptiness meditation later, so I just want to briefly say body scan is not early Buddhism. Body scan, I wrote an article on that. Body scan developed probably out of a particular interpretation of one step in mindfulness of breathing. And from there, then eventually came to take a lot of traction in the West, particularly through mindfulness-based stress reduction. And so just talking about the body scan allows me to position myself a little bit. I am sincerely trying to represent the teachings of early Buddhism based on my research. But I'm of course not an early Buddhist. Early Buddhism doesn't exist. That was a tradition that existed in India 2,500 years ago. So whatever I present is my interpretation. And you should take it in that way. You should take it that, okay, this is how Anālayo understands it. This is how Anālayo interprets it. Let me give it a try, but feel free to dismiss or change or adjust whatever doesn't make sense to you. There's no claim whatsoever that I got the truth. I'm going to tell you. Nothing of that. And also, as you see with this body scan, and you should also feel free to bring in things that are not early Buddhism. This is not about creating some sort of early Buddhist fundamentalism, not at all. The advantage is only that by having this common starting point of the different Buddhist traditions, it is something that we all share, Theravada, Mahayana, Vajrayana. It all started there. And so that gives us a reference point and gives us some ideas and inspirations for how we then do our own practice. So this body scans I use, I simplify anatomical parts into skin, flesh and bones, do body scans to feel these. Then the 4 elements, which we will do later. And then third practice is really about facing death. And that's the one thing most people don't like to look at, facing our own mortality. In fact, when I teach these courses residentially, the third day when I introduce that, yogis are up, down, all over, lose their things, fall over, down, and I don't know what. Such a simple thing, we're all going to die. That's what the practice is about, learning to face death. Because without facing death, how can we seriously, truly, and fully live?